In this tutorial, we're going to look at using Blender. I'm using currently Blender 2.75, although I think anything after Blender 2.5 would work similarly. Um, we're going to do some simple texturing of an object. So I'm in the standard scene with the cube. I'm going to delete the cube and then go over here and create, we're going to just do a simple coin object to start with. So I'm just going to go over here and select a cylinder because it's coin shaped and create that. I'm going to move it up a little bit. I'm going to resize it. So if I scale it, it scales the whole thing. So I just want to scale on one dimension. So I'm going to hit S for scale and then Z. And notice the blue line showing that I'm only scaling in this one direction. And then move down till I get the cylinder down to about a coin shape. So there I have my coin shaped cylinder. Let's zoom in on that. See how that's looking. Okay, so there's my cylinder. So now we're going to texture this. So to texture it, I've got to select all the surfaces first. So I'm going to go in edit mode. I was in object mode, edit mode. I can hit tab to do the same thing. I'm going to go to faces over here, faces, so I can select the individual faces. I'm just going to hit A and A again, and all the faces should be selected. Now I'm going to do what's called a UV unwrap. We're going to take this three-dimensional surface and kind of unwrap all the surfaces into a flat two-dimensional image. While I'm doing this, I'm going to grab this little corner up here and bring up a new window. And I'm going to switch this over to, I was in 3D view. I'm going to do this in UV image editor view. And this is where the image will be displayed. Okay, so going back here, I've selected I've hit AA, selected all my edges, and now as long as I'm in edit mode, I should see the shading and UVs menu here. Going to go there and choose UV unwrap. There are different options for doing this. I can unwrap just by a projection, only the parts I have is different ones. We're just going to do something simple and use the smart UV projection. And then just say OK. And it should map my images here. Now I can edit this further. We're not going to go into details on how to do that. But I could edit these images. I could select different parts of these and like scale them and stuff like that. I could move these around, whatever, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to leave these as is. So this is my UV map. So you can see, let's see, I'm going to go over here, click on my object again. So here's my, and then let's see, go back to surfaces. Go in edit mode, click on the surfaces. So if I click on these parts, you'll see, so these parts are different edges of my image, and they're grouped around, and then I have the big top and bottom. So if I select them all, I see them all. So this is a part of an edge, this is part of an edge, so it expanded, but that's part of, and this is part of edge, and this is probably the top and the bottom of my coin. Okay, now I've got this image again. I'm going to export it, UV, export UV layout. I'm going to save it somewhere. I'm just going to save it to my desktop right now. And I'm going to call it coin UVs. And it's going to save it as a PNG file. That's fine. I'm going to hit export to save that out there. I'm going to save my whole image. I forgot to save my 3D model, so I'm going to save that Blender file also to the desktop. And I'm just going to call it coin and leave it as a .blender file. Okay, so now I have to go out and edit this image. So I'm going to go find it on my desktop and edit it. So here's the Blender file, here's the UV file. I'm just going to edit it in Paint, so I'm just going to open it up and choose Edit. Again, you could edit it in Photoshop or GIMP. Okay, so I've resized this in Paint a little bit, and I want to see this. And for now, I'm just going to paint the different surfaces. I'm going to paint, where's my paint bucket? Paint bucket here. Paint bucket here. I'm going to maybe be a little more creative with the sides and just paint some of these options here. Now again, if you're using Photoshop or GIMP, you can actually create layers and make some of this a lot easier to work with. But again, I'm not worrying too much about that right now. I'm painting some of these different colors so we can just kind of see how the mapping goes also. Maybe I'll write in a something about the size. I mean, put some figure on the top. Maybe I'll put a dollar sign here or something like that. So again, I'm just doing something simple today so we can see how this texturing works. Okay, so now I'm going to save this image out there and close this out. So again, if I were using Photoshop or GIMP, I'd actually do some stuff with layers. I often would just create a new layer to lay over this, and yeah, maybe just paint that whole layer or work with that layer on top of things. So I might just paint like a whole layer and add some symbols, and then maybe change the opacity so I could see the texture underneath this layer, but work on this. But again, you don't have to work with GIMP or something with layers. You can just do paint with some of this stuff also. So going back into Blender, now last I did was I saved this image here. Now I'm going to use that image as a material. Now, if you're working with the default rectangle, I mean the default cube, it starts with an image already. I'm trying to move this over here. Yeah, I mean it starts with what is called a material and a texture already built in. But when you create a new object, it doesn't have a material or a texture here. So this is what we're missing. We'd want to add a material, and then on that material add a texture. An easy way to do this is to use the node editor. So I'm going to drag down yet another window here and switch this to node editor. So here's my node editor. And I want to make sure there should be a box here. Okay, so we've got the node editor here, the UV editor here, and we're still in 3D view here. Now we've got to add a material. We don't see anything in the node editor. There's no material, so that's a hint that we have to add a material. So again, I'm going to go over here to, I'm going to make this a little, let's see if I can widen this out a little bit. Hard to work in this little recording screen. Okay, so I'm going to go under this little globe-like thing. Now, those are the materials. So I've got to add a material. So I'm going to hit this new button down here to add a material to my editor. Now you can also then go in and add textures, but we're going to do that to the node editor here. So right now it's not showing up here. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Oops, not that one. Make this window a little bigger so that I can see this use node editor and click that box so it'll show the node editor. So that's one thing. So I have to add a material, click the new use node editor, and the last thing I have to do is go up here and switch this to not the Blender renderer but the Cycles renderer, which is a different renderer. Okay, try this again. Again with a larger monitor. So if I zoom in here, okay, I have my output. This is what's being output, and my material here. I'm going to add my texture here. Go add texture, image texture. Again, now if you can't see this add texture, image texture, that means you're still in Blender renderer. When you're in Blender renderer, there is the menus for rendering here are different. So I'm going to make sure this is in Cycles. Add texture, image texture, and I'm going to put this box kind of right over here. Now I want to connect the color output from my texture to the color input here. So just click and drag a line from the color to the color. We can also do alpha bump and other things, and so I'm just going to do but here I'm just worried about the color. And I'm going to go open up my image, go to my desktop, find my coin UV and open that up, and that'll map the coins over here. Now at this point I should be able to see it here, but I'm probably not in the right mode. I want to switch this to, instead of solid mode, texture mode, and I should see my coin here. So that means I've mapped the texture here. So I've got all my texture parts here on that image. So that's good. I've done my work. I'm going to close this node editor for now. I'm going to drag this up until I see my little arrow and let go. Now I don't see it here at all. So one more thing I could do now that I've got the image open is click on this button and select the coin UV image, and it blows it up for some reason, and then zoom in here a little bit, and then I can see the different parts of this UV. I can actually then, let me see if I can make this a little bigger. I want to still, I'm going to widen this out a little bit. Okay, so I can see my images here. Now if I just select let's say I select a surface here, like this, and move this, notice wherever I map the surface on the left, it'll show that. So wherever this face goes on my image, that's what's being mapped onto my image. So I want to put that down here. Same with over here. Let me get the right plot again. Okay, and click. Same with if I were to grab this bulk here. Oops, you can't see that on my image. Let's do this one. Yeah, we can see that. So again, as I move that, that'll map different things. So that's like, again, we can create this image and put our different patterns in here. In fact, if we wanted, we could map all, if we wanted all the images the same, I could just map all these images on this, oops, and reuse these lines here. I mapped all my lines. And now I'm not using, I've got this stuff painted here, but I'm not using it because none of my faces are going there. Okay, so here's my final coin. I want to save that. And now when I import this into Unity, I want to make sure I bring in both the Blender file and the PNG for the UVs. Let's just do that real quick. So now I've run Unity, and I can just go to my assets folder and grab my Blender file and drag it in here. I could also just drop it in Explorer, but should bring in my coin here with some other things. And I should be able to grab my material here and bring my coin UVs here. Now I've got my coin here. I should be able to just drag it onto the screen here. Now by default I'm not seeing it textured because the material, I've got the UV here, but it doesn't know to associate that UV with this coin. So I can actually just drag that and drop that on my coin, and it'll map it the right way. So it'll map it correctly using the UV mapping that I had. So again, I just drag my coin up there and then drag my material onto this. Now once I have this, I can create a prefab of this. I can just drag it down here and create a prefab for this. And make a prefab coin, and then in the future I can just drag that coin and it has the material all tied together. Okay, so that wraps up this tutorial.